to my channel, Silvana BNL. This is Silvana here. Today we're doing the Kahk for the Easter feast, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So I wanted to do it for you guys. We're doing it a couple of different ways. And if you like this video, subscribe to my channel, like, share with your friends, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified every week when I post a new video. We do make it and sell it. We do in New Jersey and Staten Island. So if you guys want us to make you some and, sell it for you, kindly email me. The email is in the page description. And you can ask for pricing, how to, any questions on how to make and all of that, email me. I am going to employ my mother to help me with the cookies today and my mother-in-law and my husband, because it does take a lot of hands to make it quickly. And without wasting any more time, let's get into the video.
We're gonna start by making the first fillings of the kahk. So we're making this licorice. We don't really need that much sugar. We usually for kahk you need to get the licorice without any sugar. But we went to different stores and couldn't find any of that sugar, so that's fine. We add sugar to the kahk anyway, so that's okay. We're just going to use it with the sugar, but we're going to dab off as much of the sugar as possible. As you can see, we are only putting the heat on just to melt the butter. I am not going to keep the heat on. I'll turn it off at some point. This is only just to melt the butter, and I am going to begin by just warming up the licorice a little bit so I can melt it. And as you can see, I'm just basically stirring it into the butter so that it can warm up a little bit, and we're just gonna press on it to melt it and mix it all together. Instead of being cubes like this, we want to make it into kind of doughy a little bit. So, and then as you can see, I'm just turning off the fire. Well, technically my mother. But we turned off the fire, and like I said, we're just pressing the melon and breaking it apart. We don't want it in squares like this. We're just going to simply little by little just press it down, so that we can work it into the kahk eventually. All the fillings for kahk usually need to have sugar anyway, so it's okay that the licorice had sugar in it. So that's not a problem. And like I said, the butter, we're not heating it up, we're not making it so hot, we're just warming it up, melting it basically. And we are mixing the licorice together to make it into a ball. We don't want it on heat. So as you guys saw, I turned off the heat, as soon as I started mixing the licorice together. So I turned the heat off first, then I started mixing the licorice together. You don't want to mix it over the heat because it will mess it up for you. My mom used about, I would say, a teaspoon of butter, and she melted it, and about 4 cubes of the licorice and then she started melting it, and she's just using the heat from the pan. Like I said, we turned off the heat, and then she's going to add some sesame seeds, white sesame seeds, and a little bit of vanilla just to give it a beautiful taste. You can always also use the just sesame, just make the kahk with sesame. It tastes very good. My mom has always made it with just sesame, but this year she wanted to make it with more fillings just to give it extra, taste and, for a change, Every year she makes it with just sesame, but this year she wanted to make it with more fillings. So that's why we're using the licorice, and we're gonna do more fillings as the video progresses. So keep watching. just so you know, the 4 cubes were not enough. 4 cubes of licorice. It left quite a bit of butter. So my mom ended up adding an extra cube of licorice and also melted it with the rest of the licorice. And that way it made it more in like it took more of the butter in. And she's adding about a handful of sesame. For the sesame, she did use the a separate pan, and roasted it. No butter, no nothing. Just added the sesame into the pan just to take some of the liquid out. And you always want to do that with the sesames because that prolongs the life of sesame seeds. Don't leave it raw because then it can get moldy with time. But when you roast it, it prolongs the life of the sesame seeds. And then she added some vanilla, about half a teaspoon, I would say, like very small amount. And she kept mixing, mixing, mixing. So she kept mixing until all the licorice came together in like a bowl kind of a thing. And it got to the point where you can actually pick up like some of the licorice, roll it up in your hand, and make tiny balls that you'll be able to put inside the kahk. So that's when you know your licorice is ready and it's done. And after that, she transferred it into a bowl and kept mixing a little more just to cool it down a touch. And then once she mixed it enough, she put it to the side, and that was the first. There you go. That's what it looks like, licorice. And that is the first filling that we're using for today. For our second filling, we're going to use dates. This is baking dates. This is already ready for use right away. All the seeds are taken off, or the cover is taken off. It's just dates, smushed together. Anyway, I'm going to use a little bit of butter to just soften it up a little. And I'm just going to use the same butter that I used for the licorice because I already have enough. I don't need that much more. We are not going to use this whole thing of dates because this is too much for me. As you can see, we're just going to take a little bit. Also because we are making a lot of fillings, so we're making the licorice, and we're also going to make some that are plain. So that's why I'm not using a lot. I'm just going to put it in a pan, in the same pan that I made the licorice in it, because I have some butter left over. So I'm going to use that same butter, and I'm going to just wrap the dates in butter. Because I don't know if it came with butter already. It doesn't say it's specific dates for the kahk. It just says baking dates. So I don't know if it has butter on it. And it does need to have butter so that it doesn't harden with me after, like while I'm baking it. So we're just going to wrap it in the butter like this so it makes it soft. And we're also going to add just a touch of vanilla, like maybe half a teaspoon, also to improve on the taste. And like I said, you see me just squeezing in it and just making it into a bowl. This is, like I said, just to get all the butter through it. So like I said, it doesn't harden when it's baking, so you need to do this. And as you guys can see, I'm not turning on the heat for this. Do not turn on the heat for this because it will ruin it. I'm just using the warmth of the pan that was there from when I was making the licorice. Please don't turn on the heat while you're making this. These are the fillings that we're going to use for the kahk. And like I said before, you can make the kahk plain without any fillings whatsoever. And it doesn't cost much. All you need is just original ghee, or like what the factories do in Egypt. They don't really use original butter. They use like the fake butter that's out there, and then they put the butter essence on the dough, and that gives it the taste of the original butter. So if you can't afford it, don't go crazy. You don't have to do the fillings. You can, like I said, use just the regular butter and then put the butter essence to give you that rich taste, the rich butter taste. And or if you can afford to do with the original butter, you can just use the original butter or some sesame, and that's it. You don't need to fill it up with anything. We're going to go ahead and get started on the actual dough for the kahk now. For the dough, we're starting with 1 kilogram of flour, and we're adding a pinch of salt, and we mean a pinch. So about like half a teaspoon of actual salt, because this adds blessing to the flour. Also adding baking powder. Apparently, I don't know how to talk. This is about 8 grams of baking powder. We measured it previously before adding it to anything. We just put them in Ziploc bags. So we put it so we measured 8 grams, and then we're adding it to the flour, mixing it all together. My mother is making sure that we are taking all the powder out so that, we don't mess the grams measurements that we already did. We're just mixing it all together, but we are not adding it to the mixing bowl. We're going to start by adding the liquid ingredients first. For the liquid ingredients, we are taking milk. We're taking 1/4 cup of milk with a 1/2 cup of water, warming it up in the microwave for about 30 seconds, and adding yeast to it. 10 grams of yeast. This is active yeast. So the warmth is to help the yeast and the milk mix well together, and the yeast to actually react and, do what it needs to be done. We're going to add this at the end while we're finishing up the dough. This does not get added now. Just mixing it well together and then going to start on the dough. In the meantime, we're going to start on mixing the ingredients. So we're starting with 60 grams of powdered sugar. And we're making sure that all the sugar is out of the bag as usual. And then to that, I'm adding 1/2 kilogram of ghee, not butter, actual ghee. Or like we said, you can use butter and put ghee essence to give you the taste. And you're using the liquids mixer. This is the ghee that we're using. You can get it from any Mediterranean store. In the old days, like when my mom used to do it when she was young, they would just mix it with their hands, the little butter with a little sugar, and just keep mixing it with their hands. But now that we have the mixer, why? I mean, you can do it with hands. It just takes a lot of effort. So if you have a hand mixer, take advantage of that. So this is real ghee, like we said. You can use the fake ghee, like the factories in Egypt do. If you're going to use fake ghee, like we said, add the real ghee essence. That will give you the taste and the smell of real ghee, but it's not really made with real ghee if you can't afford the real ghee. Or you can do with the real ghee. We used a little more than 1/2 kilogram, so we used 530 grams instead of 500 grams. But like we said, butter will ruin it. Butter is not good for kahk at all. And make sure you're taking out all the butter. Don't leave anything in the bag, because even a gram off will mess up the kahk for you. So if you don't want to put it in a Ziploc bag and do all the things that my mom is doing, just put it in a cup or something that is easier to clear out. But make sure you take all the grams out so that it doesn't mess with your measurements. Start your mixer on the lowest setting possible, because you don't want the ingredients to fly everywhere. Mix a little bit until the powdered sugar is well incorporated in the butter. Then start increasing the speed of the mixer. You're gonna be mixing until the butter turns into a white creamy butter, like ghee, white, very, very white, very creamy to make. And then, like I said, you see this? This is well incorporated now. Now you're gonna start increasing the speed, as you can see, until you get this rich, creamy, white ghee. So the ghee has been mixing for about 5 minutes now. As you can see, it's so creamy and it's so like not so white, but it's kind of white. So now we're gonna start adding our dry ingredients, like we said, the flour, the salt, and the baking powder. This is like a quarter a cup measurements, and I'm adding it a quarter at a time. As you guys can see, we slowed down the mixer because this is something that you need, to do by yourself. You don't need us to tell you, but we're just gonna slow the mixer so that the flour doesn't fly off everywhere, and we're just gonna add it quarter a cup at a time while mixing it very slowly. This step is important because you don't want to dump the whole flour in. It's gonna just clump up and it will not give you that mixed soft dough that you want for the kahk. You need to take your time adding the flour in. Little by little, we're just adding it and mixing it very softly. The kahk is basically ghee and flour. The little sugar that we added in the beginning, it was only like 60 grams. It doesn't really count. The only job for that sugar is to make the the ghee soft and fill with air. It helps fill it with air, the sugar. But mainly it's flour and ghee. And the more you mix it, the more you serve it with the mixer, the better it will be. You need it. You need the kahk to have a lot of air in it because that's what gives it that softness and that it melts in your mouth. That is because of the mixing. And gonna keep repeating this, just adding the flour in until I finish all the flour that I had already measured. Just add and mix. After I finish adding all my flour and mixing it a little bit, I am going to go add some sesame seeds, like you guys saw, roasted white sesame seeds. About 2 handfuls, that's what we added. After this, you can stop and just cut and put it in the oven and you have a great kahk. Or you can use the fillings that we had made earlier. Because we have the fillings already ready, we are going to use the fillings. But if you want to make it just plain kahk, this is where you would stop and just cut it and just put it on your baking sheet, throw it in the oven, and you're good to go. And it will just be plain. You spray it with powdered sugar after it comes out, and you give it to your friends and family, and tastes so good. Or you can use the fillings like we're gonna do. My mom stopped the mixer to test the dough to see if it's ready or not, and she realized that it needs a little more mixing. The more you mix in this, the more you add air to the dough, the better it will help you. You need to mix the flour and the butter as best as you possibly can, because the moment you add the milk and the yeast, you only need like 1 or 2 rounds of the mixer, and that is it. You cannot mix when you add the milk and the yeast because that makes the cookie really hard, and you don't want that. You want it soft and it melts in somebody's mouth. So you need to add as much air as possible before you add the milk and the yeast. So that's why my mom keeps testing the dough to see how it is, if it's ready or not. And then she's going to add some more air and mix a little more. Then we're going to add the milk and the yeast. You know your dough is ready when you take a piece of it on your hand and roll it around, and nothing of the dough, no pieces get stuck to your hand. If there's still pieces getting stuck to your hand, then you need to, like mom is doing right now, there's still pieces getting stuck to her hands, as you can see. So you need to mix a little more. So that's how you test if your dough is ready or not. Once it's ready, after all the mixing, that's when you add your milk and your yeast. And after you add them, you're only mixing for like I said, 1 or 2 rounds, just to get the liquid incorporated in the dough. Once it's incorporated, turn off the mixer. Do not mix for as long as we're mixing right now. The quality of the kahk is measured by how soft it is, and if it melts in your mouth when you're eating it or and whatnot. So this is why we're telling you not to mix when you add the liquids, because that when you add the liquids, that makes it so hard, and you don't want that. You want it soft and you want it to melt, and this is why we're mixing before we add any liquids. So just as a review, this is 1/4 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of water, and 10 grams of yeast. So we're adding the liquid now, and like we said, we're only gonna do mix in a second just to get the liquid incorporated, and then we're stopping. We did let the mixture sit and rise for a little bit for the yeast to make sure that the yeast is actually working. So this is how you test it. You put it in liquid, warm liquid, of course, and you let it sit for about 10 minutes just to see if the yeast will rise or if it's good or not good. If you don't know your active yeast is good. If you do, then just add it in with, whenever your dry ingredients for any dough. But for the kahk, it needs to be added with the liquids. Now my mom stopped the mixer, and then she's just finishing mixing everything all together by hand so she can feel the dough so that it doesn't roughen up on her. So like I said, we don't want the cookies to be hard and rough, so that's why my mom is doing it by hand. And right now she's testing the dough to see if it needs any more mixing. But as you guys can see, nothing is coming out in her hand. The dough is totally you can make it into a ball easy, is what I'm trying to say. And it's done. It's ready. Now all we're going to do is just cut, put it on a baking sheet, put in whatever filling we're using, and then that's it. We're going to put it in the oven. So let's go do that. So now we're starting to make the fillings into little balls that we're going to fill into the actual kahk. And just so you guys know, make it as small as you guys can, because you don't want your kahk to be big enough to take a big bowl of filling, because it doesn't really look good when it's that big. You want it small, you want it petite, you want it, to fit in a person's mouth, no matter how big or small that person is. So try to make it, as small as you possibly can, the fillings, so you don't have to make the kahk bigger. Anyway, we're just gonna keep repeating this until we finish all the fillings, and then after that we'll do the actual kahk and then fill it, and I'll show you how to do that in like 2 minutes. Okay, so we're gonna start taking some dough from the kahk dough and just roll it up in your hands, make it into a nice ball, and then make a hole in the middle, like a hole deep enough. Put in the filling, whatever filling you're putting in, and then close the kahk. But make sure the dough of the kahk is completely covering the filling. You do not want any of the filling to be showing. And then you start using a graver like my mom is using, like this. This is called the kahk graver. And you just make holes in the actual kahk. And that will help. This is only for the sugar after it's cooked. You need to make sure there's holes to absorb the sugar, the powdered sugar that you're going to spray on top. So this is why we're doing these holes. And another important information, do not spray your baking sheet with any butter or any oil or anything, because the kahk dough is filled with butter. So you don't need any more butter on the baking sheet. So we're just going to do another one. You make a big, you make a circle, you make a big hole, you close the kahk really well, and then you roll it, to the side. Something else to keep in mind, try to keep the kahk sizes the same on each tray, meaning if you plan on making it big, then make all the kahk big, or if you're planning on making it small like we discussed, then make all the kahk small, because you do not want one big, one small on the same tray. The reason being is, once you put that into the oven, if there's different sizes, the big one will not cook enough and the small one will burn. So you don't want that. So keep the same size for the kahk on the same tray. The another thing is, my mom left the one that is filled with a licorice blank. What she was saying is, you can leave it blank, and then after you're done rolling the entire baking sheet, make it like put kahk on all the baking sheet. You can take a roll. Sorry, you can take a fork. If you don't have a graver, like a kahk graver, you can take a fork and just press down gently on the kahk. You just want to make holes in the kahk so that the sugar stays on it when you spray it, when you put it on after it comes out. So roll after you put the filling, and then flatten it a little bit with your hand, just a little bit, enough that it makes an actual cookie. And either use a graver, use a fork, whatever you have will work. Don't go crazy. Something else to keep in mind, as you guys can see, the dough of the kahk is covered. Make sure that the dough of the kahk is covered while you're working, because you don't want it to harden on you. You want it to keep its moisture, its softness. That's why you gotta keep it covered. And while you're rolling up your dough, start heating up your oven to 160 Celsius if you're in Egypt, or if you're here in America with us, warm it up to 320 Fahrenheit. That's what you need to put in the oven. That's the temperature you need for cooking the kahk. 320 Fahrenheit or 160 Celsius. Also keep in mind that the trays have to go into the middle rack. It cannot be on the top because it will not cook the kahk very well. And it cannot be all the way on the bottom because it will burn the kahk. Sorry, so you only need it on the middle. Not the top, not the bottom. We're just going to finish up rolling all the kahk and then we'll be right back. And this is what the kahk looks like after we finished rolling all of it. And it's pressed down with a fork. See how beautiful it looks? It looks so good, you guys. Oh, I can actually eat it raw, but whatever. And this is the kahk after we finished rolling all of it. This is using the graver, and this is filled with the dates. I also did two different shapes on top so I can differentiate which one is filled with dates and which one is filled with the licorice. So the one with the fork is filled with the licorice. The one with the graver is filled with the dates. Anyway. Now all you have to do is just throw it in the oven. Like I said, in Egypt, 160 degrees Celsius. In America, 320 Fahrenheit. As you guys can see, throw it in the middle row and put it in for 15 minutes. And then we'll be right back. After the 15 minutes, my mom checked on it and it still needed more time. So we ended up adding another 10 minutes. Finally, it's done. Oh my God, look how beautiful it looks. So the kahk ended up staying for 25 minutes in total at 320 degrees Fahrenheit. Like I said, after 15 minutes, we checked on it and it still needed a little more cooking time. So that's why we added another 10 minutes. So 25 minutes in total. You guys, seriously, don't tell your enemies about this recipe. This is so good. Oh my God. You're gonna eat it you're gonna eat the whole thing by yourself. Anyway, if you're on a diet, I don't suggest making this because you will not be able to resist. This is how good it is. It's really good. So this is the final product. The one with the fork is filled with the licorice. The one with the graver is filled with dates. They both taste so good. Honestly, there's no words at this point. Anyway, look at the bottom. When you see the bottom, that's how you know it's done. Look how beautiful brown it is. It looks so good. That's how you know that the kahk is fully cooked. It's done. it's ready to be served. So, when you store it, don't store it with the sugar. You need to store it plain, and then whenever you're whenever you're presenting it to someone, that's when you add the sugar to it. It cannot be stored with the sugar, and it needs to be stored in a cool, dry place.
انا حاطه سكر قليل ليه؟ لان انا ما بحبش السكر. لكن عايزه تحطي اكتر حطي، بس انا عايزه اقول لك ان انا اوه ماي جاش، ده بقى بايه؟ بالملبن. بصي من جوه، بصي مستويه ازاي، بصي جميله ازاي. ده اللي هو قصدي ده بالعجوه اهي، العجوه بانت طيبه صغنونه وحلوه ازاي. خطير. مش عارفه انا من حلاوته. خدوا كلوه وقولوا يلا بالهنا والشفا.
ما تقولوش لاعدائكم على الوصفه بقى، ولا قولوا لهم.
قولوا له بس ياكل بالهنا والشفا.
Okay, our second taste tester.
برجر. وريلها وشها بقى وهي مبتسمه.
Would you recommend this to your friends?
Absolutely. Very good. خدي الزعترونة.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
It melts in your mouth. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Uh-huh. No word.
No word. يا طعمه جميل جدا. بيدوب في البق.
There are no words. This is so good. I'm gonna take another one.
خدتي واحدة بالملبن، خدي واحدة بالعجوة بقى عشان تشوفي بقى الفرق في الطعم.
خدت بالعجوة.
عشان تشوفي الفرق في الطعم. دايب، مش متحمل انك انت تمسكيه. Very good. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. طعمه ايه؟
I can finish this whole thing by myself. I get so fat, but
شكلها كده مش هندي حد منهم.
it's worth it. Worth it. It's so worth it.
Okay.
If I finish it by myself.
Okay. Got it.
I'll be so fat.
But it's delicious.
Very delicious. Okay.
Don't tell your enemies. Or tell them. Alright guys, I don't know. Whatever y'all want to do. This is it for today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up. Share with your friends and hit that notification bell so you can be notified every week when I post a new video.
إذا كانوا عندهم أسئلة ولا
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about this, kindly send them to me in an email. You can check my email in the YouTube page. If you want us to make you batches, if you live in New Jersey, we do make it and sell it. So email me for batches and whatever. And prices.
New Jersey and New York.
And New York as well. If you do you have any other questions? I mean, what am I saying? Shit. Alright. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Alright, come on.
Hilarious. They go to like the
Get
whole
into it.
Black
Get
Friday.
into it.
So is this the dates?
Yeah, that one's the dates.
That sounds funny.
Yeah, it reminds me of a kurabieta. It's really good.
Awesome.
Look at that filling.
It's really good.
This is very, very yummy.
Thank
Very
you.
moist. It's not dry. Holy crap.
You could easily drink
What is it?
these eat a few of these with like a cup of tea.
Was there an
Come
almond?
on.
Is there almonds in that?
I think there's like an
What?
almond
Is there almonds in
extract or
that?
something.
In what?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Nothing should have. It's sesame. It has sesame in it.
Oh, I'm good with something. I'm good.
One of my favorite Egyptian desserts.
I mean, it would have been a thing worth dying for. It's very good.
John, you gonna eat it?
He's just-
Are these different?
That's
This
the
has Turkish delight filling. This
Lukumi.
has dates.
It's lukumi, not Turkish delight.
Whatever, lady. How we doing?
difference. You would like this one.
Touch my salt. That was good.
The stores can't make it right anymore.
No, they can't.
Really good.
Dawn, turn around.
I was trying to get the hair out of my face. However, it tastes your
That,
lovely
oh my god,
cookies
that
than
should
my
be
hair.
your thumbnail.
How we doing?
Delicious.
Thank you.
I like this one. It tastes very serious.
Which one is that?
Everyone had one.
The date.
Where did my husband disappear to? Okay.